welcome to another edition of PORA. I'm your host, David Russell, and I got my co-host here. Oh, no, I don't. He's actually a participant, but I'm going to say hi to him anyway. What's up, Travis?
Hey, David, what's going on?
Oh, nothing much. You know that you're not going to get any love over here today because I'm moderator and you're a participant.
Right.
You know, I can't have your back, man.
Right. I'm in the hot seat this time.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, we've got a really special guest today, and I'm honored that he decided to join us to talk about this topic today. And I'll tell you the topic in a minute, obviously. But we're here with Robert Stanley from The Right to Reason. What's up, Robert?
Oh, not much. Happy to be here, brother.
Yeah, man, that's really cool, man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about The Right to Reason, man? Plug the show, let us know where we can find it and so forth.
You can find it at therighttoreason.com. It's just I want to say it's a debate show. Most everything's debates, but occasionally we'll have on authors or psychologists or philosophers and learn about something as well. So I get to learn right along with the listener. But it's voted top 10 in the atheist podcasts right now. So I was really happy to find that out. And yeah, that's pretty much all I would think to say about it. Once again, righttoreason.com. That's where you can find all the videos or links or what have you.
Now, are you a participant in your debates, or are you just more the moderator too?
My format is typically I'll be the first person to debate someone, and if they're a lot of fun, then I'll bring them back on with like a panel of guests and let everybody just yell at each other or laugh at each other, depending on the guest.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's cool, man. I really like the moderating feel too, because you just get to kind of like listen to the arguments and then ask questions, and and especially if you know the topic, it's even
I'm not
more
a
fun
good moderator. That's funny. Because I don't think of conversations as like something to control, so like, because there's so much more interesting, just kind of free flowing and unformatted. We do, some Oxford style stuff, but most everything's more Lincoln Douglas, if you even want to call it that. It's just a discussion. But
I hear you.
I used to want to debate people a lot more, and I started to become a little discouraged with. I've been doing it 4 years, and I realized that what was making me feel so labored about it is that I had this agenda, an atheist agenda, and I'm gonna convert this person or deconvert, however you want to say it. But once I stopped doing that, and I just started having conversations to try to understand what somebody thinks, and you can still be skeptical while you're doing it, and just kind of break down maybe where they make some errors or find out where maybe you've made some. But once I did that and just started getting to know people, the show really improved. Listeners increased. It became more of a fun hobby than this atheist evangelicalism. You know what I mean?
Right, man. I also hear you there. I've always had this motto whenever I do like apologetics or whenever I do like, just trying to get to know somebody in general, is like people want to know how much you care before they care how much you know. And I've always like tried to bring that to the show, because I think when I started debating early on, the internet wasn't, we didn't have these YouTube shows yet. You know what I mean? It was early 2000s, stuff was just starting, right? But I would, it was all Facebook debates, and you would get on there and battle back and forth, and they would, but at the time it wasn't, a lot of people weren't doing it. So the people you would talk to are these people that, end up having these really successful podcasts later on and stuff like that. And, you would actually make good relationships with them. So I kind of learned that because at first I think I was a little arrogant, and I had I had an agenda, right?
Right.
And then, so I learned my lesson, so to speak. And before I even got into this, I was like, well, let me do it like this. Let me bring this to the podcast. And I agree with you, man. It's so much better when you do that, and like we've always had people that just want to come back on our show because of that, because we don't push, we don't have an agenda. We want to produce good content that has good conversations in it, versus, I gotcha and I'm one upping you here,
I got you. The need for I got you just makes us a-holes to each other.
Yep. And
that's why
Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I was going to say to kind of cap on that. That's why I prefer like discussions over like formal debates, like, opening, and then rebuttal, and then like
Right.
15-minute cross-examine, all that. Like, I'd rather just have a conversation about it. I think it's more fruitful too.
And here's the other thing, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, but it's because you have to use little tactics with those kind of debates. And one of the things that like I do, like if it's cross-examination time and it's your question time, I'm gonna take forever with my answer. Am I giving you any data? And am I improving the discussion in any way? No, I'm just trying to win. And so, I mean, that's a perfect example right there. Yeah, like you'll say, Robert, what do you think of the Kalam cosmological argument or something? I'll go, let me see. The first thing I would say, and I'm just running out the clock, and it's like that's not making things better,
Right. Well, guys, today we have a discussion on the argument from contingency. So, I know it's kind of misleading. I put it, why is there something rather than nothing? But it usually always comes to the contingency argument when we talk about that. So, Travis is going to go ahead and open the floor with this style of discussion, and we are bringing the discussion we just talked about to you like that today. So, Travis is going to give an intro, then Robert's going to follow that up by telling us what he thinks and so forth, and then they'll springboard into the discussion. So I'm just going to be here to maybe guide it or ask questions. So y'all have at it. Go ahead, Travis.
All right. Sounds good. And thanks, Robert, for coming and having this discussion with me. And so to begin, I'm going to be arguing that the foundation, let me see, I'm going to pull my screen up. Sorry about that. Okay, so to begin, when considering competing hypotheses or explanations, there are a certain set of criteria known as theoretical virtues which aid us in theory choice. Some things to consider are simplicity and unification. Which theory explains more facts than rivals with the same amount of theoretical content and posits less brute facts? Which theory presents evidential accuracy by describing the facts of reality well? What about causal adequacy? Are the causal factors plausibly able to produce the evidence in need of explanation and cover a wide explanatory depth? Coherential virtues such as internal consistency. Are the theory's components for explaining contradictory? Internal coherence. We should avoid theoretical components tacked on merely to solve isolated problems. Universal coherence. A theory should not be obviously contradictory to other warranted beliefs. Aesthetic virtues. Does the theory invoke an aesthetic pleasure in its explanation? I'm going to be arguing that theism is the most simple and unifying explanation of the facts of reality, such as consciousness, the physics and fine-tuning, mathematics, morality, principles of reason, and so forth. I'm going to begin by using Dr. Rasmussen's argument for a perfect foundation to the totality of reality. So it goes, premise 1, reality in total is self-sufficient with no outside cause or explanation. Premise 2, nothing can be self-sufficient without a perfect foundation. Conclusion, therefore, reality has a perfect foundation. Now, we are surrounded by things that depend upon other things for their existence. I'm dependent on my parents for my existence, who were dependent upon their parents, who were dependent upon their parents, and so forth. This is known as the explanatory principle and is intuitively self-obvious. Since contingent things depend on other things for their existence, they could possibly not exist and are therefore not self-existent. Contingent things depend on prior conditions, and this even undergirds how we use induction in science. Another thing to realize is that even an infinite regress of causal events would still need an explanation, as the quantity to be explained makes no difference. You don't arrive at independence through a higher number of dependent things. The nature of explanation remains the same regardless. And we would have to ask, why is it that there is an infinite amount of things functioning in such a way that they do? So an infinite regress does not get rid of the need of a foundation. I'm going to be arguing that the foundation that provides an explanation of the totality of reality is God or godlike. So a natural theory that is imperfect is going to contain some degree of arbitrary limits, which are cutoffs without explanation, such as the capacity to produce only certain amounts of particles, and that has a cutoff, and so it's limited, and this limit is arbitrary. A theory which contains arbitrary limits is going to add unnecessary complexity to the theory And so therefore it is going to be one that is not simple. And of course, we prefer simple theories. Under theism, the facts in need of explanation would be an expected matter of course. Now, the foundation must have infinite power to be the explanation of the totality of reality. The foundational power is eternal. It never became actual and will never cease to be actual, because if the foundational power became actual, then something must have the power to actualize the foundational power. In that case, there would be a power before there was power, which is obviously a contradiction. The only kind of power then that can be foundational is a power that is capable of is never entering or exiting reality. This is an eternal power. The foundation for consciousness is more parsimonious as being conscious itself. The foundation for the physics and fine-tuning of the universe that leads to embodied moral agents is going to be best explained by an intelligent moral agent that is the foundation of reality with an intention to bring it about. Likewise, the foundation for principles in mathematics and reason would be best explained by an intelligent mind that is the very source of all intelligibility. Next, the foundation's mind cannot be less than maximally great, because anything less than maximally great would imply an arbitrary limit. For example, if the foundation of mind could only know mathematical truths but not moral truths, then its ability to know truth would be limited with respect to a positive quality. A perfect foundation has no limits with respect to any positive quality. It is, in fact, pure actuality. Therefore, a perfect foundation that has unlimited maximum knowledge is the case. Finally, the foundation of a moral landscape is itself good and not bad. A perfect foundation is purely positive, while a bad foundation is not purely positive. Badness is negative, and so therefore a perfect foundation lacks badness. Similarly, a perfect foundation cannot be merely neutral, as a perfect foundation that is purely positive precludes complete neutrality. Therefore, the perfect foundation is neither bad nor neutral. Instead, the perfect foundation of reality is perfectly good, and therefore the being that grounds all the effects of reality is a purely good mind that is absolute perfection. So with this set of criteria describing the facts of reality, when applied through the theoretical virtues, I think demonstrates that God, defined as absolute perfection, is the foundation of reality. And so with that, I will turn it over.
I'm concerned with this kind of apologetics right from the start. And this may be non sequitur, so feel free to just blow it off and say, no, get back on point, Robert. But it's like you guys, you people, will... You're not doing philosophy, like this isn't philosophy. This is an agenda. So you're trying to sound philosophical when just making arguments for God. You know what I mean? Like and I don't mean that as an insult. Like I don't mean to say that you're not good at philosophy or you're not intelligent. I'm sure you are, but there's this bias there. You know what I mean? It's not like, for example, everything you just said. I'm going to make a prediction. That's not what made you become a Christian. But once you became a Christian, then you started digging in this way. Once again, I get that's a non sequitur. It's frustrating.
Yeah,
it's frustrating to atheists.
Right. Well, okay. So why I became a Christian, where I grew up atheist, and I did look at these specifically, like contingency and fine tuning. I think makes it more plausible, and I'm going to have to disagree with you, because I'm using theoretical virtues, where this is a philosophy of science and how we do theory choice, and it's saying that, hey, look, the explanation of these facts of reality is going to be, there's a certain set of criteria that we go by. And so we're looking at, simplicity, unification, would it be an expected matter of course? And it's saying that, hey, look, natural explanations are going to contain some degree of arbitrary limit. And so I'm putting an explanation out there, an inference to the best explanation of the facts of reality that is simple, and it goes through this criteria of theoretical virtues. And so that's a methodology in the philosophy of science.
Okay. But fair enough. That was just a random critique. Shots fired from the start. But anyway, okay. So as far as contingency, to answer the question, why is there something rather than nothing, or discussing the argument from contingency, we don't know. So an easy answer to why is there something rather than nothing is because nothing cannot be. There was never nothing. There couldn't be nothing, and something can't come from nothing. I'll give you that olive branch right away. So
right. Okay.
It's frustrating in the sense that you don't know why there's something rather than nothing any more than I do. And even in your worldview, there was never nothing because there was God. And every argument that you make, I know this is so cliche, but whatever you keep making the same apologetic arguments, you're going to keep hearing the same rebuttal. You know what I mean? And whatever argument you make about contingency or why is there something rather than nothing, or where does this all come from? How does something come from nothing? That then has to be applied to God naturally, or else you're special pleading. And that puts us both in a very similar place, because even if I say everything started at A, and I don't know why A exists, but A is where it began, and you go, well, actually, I'm going to start at Z. I'm going to go a little bit farther back, Robert. Okay, well, we have the same question with Z. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Am I making sense, or am I just kind of?
No, I understand what you're saying, but here's the thing. So actually with this, if you'll notice in the argument, I'm not making a natural supernatural distinction. Like I concede all natural processes. So in that sense, I am a naturalist. I'm not trying to explain the supernatural working within the natural. I'm trying to explain why there is the natural at all, the foundation of reality. And I'm saying that you'll notice in the argument it said the totality of reality, and nothing can be beyond reality. And so, there are these criteria again with the theoretical virtues of what's simple, what it offers the best explanation. Because, like even if there's an infinite regress, that doesn't remove the need for an explanation of why there is that infinite regress. And so, and this is one of the things I like about the contingency, because we're looking at what's the best explanation. And so a natural theory is going to contain these arbitrary limits of why does it only produce these type of chemicals and these, neutrons and protons and things of that sort. And so it's going to have an arbitrary cutoff that has no explanation. And so the foundation of reality, if it's perfect, is going to have purely positive qualities, and it's going to be simple. It's going to unify the facts of reality, like why it's fine-tuned, why we have things like the applicability of mathematics, morality, the principles of reason, why we can do logic and things of that sort. And so with a foundation that contains these properties is going to be a more parsimonious explanation than a natural explanation with arbitrary limits.
Doesn't evolution explain a lot of those questions without the need of something greater?
See, here's the thing. For myself, I'm not an intelligent design proponent. Okay, I'm a theistic evolutionist, cool. And and so I'm going to explain why there is evolutionary processes, and such that why is the origin of life in this unicellular life that evolves in the way that it does. I mean, that doesn't remove the explanation of why the processes are occurring in the first place. I guess I'm just trying to say I'm not trying to posit God in natural processes, but why there are these processes in the first place.
But you mentioned intelligence, morality,
yes,
and I like how whether it's good or something like that, whether it's you did use the word good, but just right, just recently, what was it? You said it was something like beneficial or so. I can't remember the term you used, but all these things are explained by evolution. We don't need a God for that. But if you're going to go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like with evolution, we have to look at why there is this process occurring. Like, what's the metaphysical reality behind evolution, not the actual process itself, if that makes sense.
Right. But that's not going to. That's a different topic from morality or why we find this reality to be good or beneficial to us. our ability to understand mathematics or any other kinds of forms of intelligence, that those are completely non sequitur to what started evolution. But evolution can explain all of that. We don't even need philosophy for that stuff. But so I would say a large amount of your argument doesn't even need to be there, and it's already explained. We don't even have to ask those questions, but we have those answers. Now we can expound on the answers, but it has nothing to do with God. And I don't see any reason that we need to insert God there.
Right. Okay. So that's a metaphysical claim. So when you say that, you're saying that, you're invoking metaphysical naturalism. Like these are competing grand theories of reality. We're talking metaphysical naturalism or theism. And I'm saying the foundation of reality that leads to moral agents and, intelligence, laws of logic and everything is going to be more parsimoniously explained by absolute perfection that contains these qualities that we're explaining. Whereas under naturalism, the fact that these things would come about would be very surprising and contain arbitrary limits, which is going to lower its probability of being the case. And so, there's again this criteria of theoretical virtues and how we we're offering an inference to the best explanation of these things. And so if we invoke metaphysical naturalism, we're going to run into this problem of arbitrary limits.
It is not intuitive that all of this could have just happened, right? It's not intuitively true because we live in a state of reality. We're in the middle place. Things are not necessarily really, really big. Or really, really small for us. We're right in the middle, right? We're average about everything. Our planet's an average size. Our solar system's an average solar system. Our sun's an average sun. And our reality is going to only be intuitive for things that fit with average middle stuff, right? So whenever you start talking about something that's outside of that area and then say, but it needs to feel intuitive, that's whenever you run into a problem. So whenever you're saying, how did it just, look how it turned out, this had to have a designer, you're speaking from a place of this need for intuition, I think. And it's no more fantastic than, I'm sure you've heard this analogy, but I think it's appropriate here. The puddle being so impressed that it's shaped like the hole. It couldn't have been shaped any other way, but it's look, I was designed perfectly to fit into this pothole in the street.
Okay.
It's not as improbable or fascinating as you might intuitively think it is.
Okay, so now we're kind of getting into the fine tuning, and so what's the explanation behind the fine tuning? And with all due respect, it is not the case that we're in. Okay, so you have to have there's 140 fine tuned parameters that have to be right for a life permitting universe. The fundamental forces have to be precise, such that they produce heavy elements, and that will build up in the nuclear furnace of stars in just the way that they do. And so you have to have a certain set of criteria just for a life permitting universe at all. And then you have to have a certain, cluster of galaxies. Then you have to have a precise solar system. You have to be, all of these different things have to be precise. And so the puddle, it's not explanatory. It's attempting to remove the need for an explanation. And so an explanation that covers the facts of reality is going to be more parsimonious than saying, hey, there is no explanation, again, because then we're going to invoke arbitrary limits. And so a theory that doesn't have such limits is going to be more parsimonious, simple, unifying to the facts of reality. And so it's going to be a better explanation. And in fact, under theism, if God is like I was saying before, if God is a moral agent, then it's moderately probable that he's going to produce moral agents, and so embody moral agents. And so laws of physics have to be precise such that they produce human bodies, and so the puddle doesn't give us any kind of an explanation. It tries to say It tries to avoid an explanation at all costs.
It's not. No, it's not an explanation. It's just, I was using it as an analogy to show that we are here because of each of those, precise details that you're talking about. If those things were different, then things would be different. You know what I mean? Like, and then whatever that, imagine that conscious being was then looking at his reality and going, look, everything was set just for me to be this kind of person. It's like, well, if it was a little different, it'd be Robert and Travis having a conversation rather than, two aliens that, would be in our place because things were slightly different. Like it. Okay. My point is it's the shape of the hole in the ground is what caused the water. And if it was shaped differently, then the puddle would be shaped differently. And that's really, it might be, you might feel like I'm oversimplifying it, but
no, this is the puddle analogy is, it's a very, I don't know how to put this charitably. It's not a very good critique that's really taken too seriously. But okay, so what I'm trying to offer an explanation. And again, we're not invoking God and processes. We're invoking why there are these processes in the first place. So we're trying to posit grand theories of reality. And so if we're going to go with something like metaphysical naturalism, like you're suggesting,
I'm not suggesting anything.
I think it's fairly reasonable to ask for some kind of explanation of why metaphysical naturalism is the case such that it precludes theism, especially when we look at the theoretical virtues of how we do theory choice.
See, the question itself is a setup from the start, in the sense of does my argument better explain why there's something? Well, at that point, you could posit any argument, and it may be better, especially whenever the alternative is I don't know. I don't know is humble, by the way.
Yeah, and so if I could put in light of a conversation like that, I could just simply remove the deductive argument I just used, which I think stands, but I could say, okay, well, let's just look at it abductively. Would these sets of facts in reality be more expected under theism or naturalism? And so I think it's fairly reasonable to say that these sets of facts are a more expected matter of course, Travis, given theism than naturalism.
But you picked certain things that would appeal to your argument. You didn't take all of reality and describe it, break it down into 5 main points, and then these 5 main points are then broken down into lesser points. You took particular things that would defend your argument and then said this is what reality has. Well, no, for instance, you didn't add in the complete cruelty of our reality and how it seems that we let me expand on that. You didn't add in how so much of the universe, let's say, is just nothing. Well, nothing colloquially speaking, right? And so much of the universe, it just seems like what is going on here? There's no it's not like we're just surrounded by intelligent life all worshiping God. In fact, it seems really weird that we're the only intelligent life we can find, which is kind of spooky, right? It's a little weird. And we're starting to see a lot of the universe. We could it's not like we would have to shake hands with an alien. We could see if they have the ability to be moving around their own solar system. So if we were looking at another solar system like ours, and there was somebody there that had satellites orbiting a planet, we can see that and a great distance, and there's nothing around. And then in addition to that, it's amazing that just this one planet seems to have the intelligence that is necessary to even consider a god or speak with a god. And somehow what a coincidence that God spoke reality into existence, and hey, we speak, we have language. You know what I mean? Like it's so you left out the randomness and just cruel, cold death of the entire universe But you made sure you added in aesthetics because that's significant. You know what I mean? You specifically picked out things that would defend your argument, and then you're like, well, this explains those. But yeah, but you didn't do it intellectually honestly.
Okay, well, we want to make sure we remain charitable and not call each other dishonest, like without asking for an explanation first.
Right. I don't. Okay, so I didn't mean that to say you're lying.
No,
I just mean it lacks.
That's fine. I would like to expand on what you said, though.
Sure.
Okay, so one thing, with the mass density of the universe, if you don't have all of this extra space that you're talking about, see, that's what's necessary. The mass density controls the amount of heavy element, the precision in the heavy elements that build up for life chemistry. And so without the mass density, you don't get a rocky planet that can support advanced life like we have. And also it controls the expansion rate. If the mass density wasn't such that it is, like the universe wouldn't be able to form stars, planets, galaxies, and things of that sort. And so the mass density is fine-tuned such that it can provide, the life chemistry needed for life on a rocky planet. And then when we look at, natural processes, like even kind of steelman what you're saying, it's like the cruel death and in the evolutionary process, and why do we have these natural processes such that we do? And you'll notice it's only in this type of environment where embodied moral agents can have justified true beliefs of and have epistemic knowledge to make these morally significant decisions. In fact, it's we use technology over the fossil fuels that have built up over the last 4.56 billion year history of life on the earth to have a high-tech global civilization where we can make these morally significant decisions. And so, these things you're mentioning, they work in favor of theism because it's only with these type of processes that we get a planet like we have that will, where and the evolutionary process will be such that it leads to embodied moral agents who have the intelligence and the capacity to launch a high-tech global civilization. And so, again, that's can be much more parsimoniously explained by theism than it is naturalism. Under naturalism, it would be very surprising. And again, we keep coming back to this. We're talking about grand theories of reality. It's either metaphysical naturalism or something akin to theism. And so, we both have these sets of facts that we have to explain. And I'm offering a parsimonious explanation. And it's not just subjective because I'm running them through the theoretical virtues of how we do theory choice. In fact, even something like cosmic inflation is an inference to the best explanation. Like we look at, why the cosmic microwave background is it looks so uniform. And so, it was Alan Guth who said, who came up with this inflationary period that, it would explain. So it's the same criteria that we use in the philosophy of science to do theories that I'm using to explain, make a theory about ultimate reality. And so I don't see that as being a very substantive critique. Respectfully.
But once again, you said it would be very surprising.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
Well,
it whether it would be surprising or not is just an argument from intuition. Yeah,
it's an inference to the best explanation.
It's really weird, like really really tiny things or really really fast things, or trying to understand how time works with gravity and all that. None of that's intuitive to us. All of it's surprising. It's crazy spooky out there. But the answers to the questions that you're trying to answer, those are going to come from like science, not from theology.
We're using philosophy of science in the metaphysical. This is a metaphysical question. Okay, so
hey guys, let me just interject. Let me just interject real quick, because I instead of maybe like critiquing the entirety of the argument, guys, maybe we should break down the different premises, because I think that would get I think that would be able to like highlight, because I understand some of Robert's critiques here, but I also understand where Travis is coming from. So maybe if we broke down the premises, and Travis, maybe you could start with your first premise to see if that premise holds, and then we can go that route. I think that would probably be better. Is there 5?
No, it's just 2 in a conclusion.
Oh, is it? Okay, so it's
okay, so
So it's 2 premises.
yeah,
with a
yeah,
conclusion. Yeah.
that should be easy.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right, go ahead, Travis. I'll let you take it.
Thank you. Okay, so reality in total is self-sufficient with no outside explanation. In other words, the totality of reality has an explanation.
Hold on. Okay, so reality is self-sufficient without an explanation.
Reality in total is self-sufficient with no outside cause or explanation.
What is this in total add-on? That seems like sneaky. What is that?
No,
what do you mean in total?
Not being sneaky. Okay, so it's just the totality of reality, everything that exists. This would even include whether or not there's God. Everything that exists in total has an explanation
for its existence.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed. Okay. All right. Okay. And so the second premise goes, well, nothing can be self-sufficient without a perfect foundation. Now, this is where you're going to probably push back. So we would probably agree that there's a that there's a foundation for why there is reality, right? Okay. And so
what's with the word foundation? That's weird.
Foundation, it's an analogy of like what explain, the explanation of the totality.
I'm always skeptical of the. It's like who was it? Was it William Lane Craig that had the everything that begins to exist has a cause. You know what I mean? It's like, hold on, why would you say, oh, God didn't begin to exist? You weaseled in this little thing. It sounds like a common sense saying, but you slip in this little thing to make your argument protected before we get to the end of the syllogism. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm pushing back, because atheists do it too, by the way. Atheists we'll do the I just lack a belief. You know what I mean? And it's like I'm setting you up from the beginning to where you, as the Christian, there's no way you can because I'm not making like a real honest argument.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying, but this isn't. I don't think it's the case here, because premise 2 is that nothing can be self-sufficient without a perfect foundation. So I'm saying from the get-go, the foundation is perfect, and so therefore, the total explanation is going to be perfect. So we would both agree. We would both agree that there's an explanation. I would hope, for the totality of reality, and then this is saying the perfect foundation. It's going to be a perfect foundation, and then the reason why it's perfect is applying these theoretical virtues, and that a theory that contains arbitrary limits, cutoff points of is going to be less probable and add more theoretical content than a theory that is simple and unifies and explains it, which has purely positive qualities.
A perfect foundation. What does that mean?
Okay. So the explanation of the totality of reality is it's not going to contain arbitrary limits, like unnecessary cutoffs, like it only produces these certain chemicals and and so it's going to have a cutoff. It's going to have a cutoff for its explanation, and so it's going to add theoretical. You're going to have a natural theory is going to contain these arbitrary limits, and so you're going to have to add these extra explanations of why there's these type of processes.
What are arbitrary limits? Oh, I cut you off. I'm sorry. It's just like
no, it's fine. I'm trying to explain. Okay, an arbitrary limit is going to be a cutoff without explanation.
What does that even mean?
Okay.
Do you understand that you are trying so hard to create something to defend your God that it's hard for someone to understand it, and it's not because your interlocutor is having trouble with the philosophy of it. It's because your wording is so bizarre and so specifically and carefully trying to lead up to the thing, kind of like I was saying, like how atheists can do, or how something that begins to exist has a a cause. Like you're trying so hard to make sure that the wording is going to work out in the end, that it's like
Okay, so we don't want to presume that I'm trying to like be deceitful and everything. What I'm saying is that
he's saying, yeah, Travis, he's saying the argument itself, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I think what Rasmussen is doing, and he's critiquing Rasmussen's argument, Travis, not you as being dishonest. He's critiquing the argument in general.
I don't even know you.
So
wouldn't assume that.
What he's saying, but here's the thing, Robert, and this is my opinion, is that the wording has to be carefully planned out, because you can't have a valid argument with an invalid form. Okay, so it has to be sound in or valid in form and truthfulness, basically. So it has to do, I think, the wording of the argument, and it may sound sneaky and stuff, but I just think that's the way the syllogism works, because he has to have an argument that can't have counterexamples and so forth. So in systematic logic, and you've probably taken a course in it too, you have to have a valid form of an argument. You have to, for it to be sound or for it to be valid, you can't have a counterexample, can't have an invalid form and stuff. And I think that's where the wording comes in. And maybe it is pushing it that way. I don't know for sure, but that's what it sounds like to me, is that you're having more issues maybe with the way the argument is in its form.
Yeah, Rasmussen, he looks like he's an apologist. Is that right?
He's a philosopher.
Is he a philosopher that makes apologetics?
Well, he's in the philosophy of religion. That's going to be a separate discipline than just like you would think of like your standard apologist. Philosophy of religion kind of looks at these issues, and you can be a philosopher of religion and an atheist.
Right, but I'm guessing he's not.
No, he is a theist. Yes.
Coincidence there. Because I was wondering about this guy. I'm like, man, he keeps bringing up this dude. I don't recognize this name. It's not like, I was feeling a little intimidated by it, to be honest, because I'm like, should I know this guy? Like, is this like Kant or Aristotle or like one of these names that we're supposed to know? Aristotle. that like honestly looked into the philosophical reasons behind things, or is this like a Christian trying to prove his God, and he went into philosophy with an agenda, and you know what I mean? It would.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what his motivations are. I really like his work. I'm not sure.
I imagine.
Beyond that.
Yeah,
right, well, anyway,
and that's the same thing. That's the same thing with you get like Graham Opie. I mean, him and Rasmussen have talked several times. And I think that's probably where your main issue is probably with the form of the argument. And I get that. Yeah. I get that.
It's just
100%.
When you said when you were saying he's probably having to word this thing a certain way because he needs to follow
a certain
the logical syllogism format and all that. And that's what I was like, let me look this guy up. And lo and behold, he's a Christian apologist in philosophy. But that's probably so that's why I was confused, because it's like, well, if he was just a dude doing philosophy and then discovered this without any bias, and then maybe I would say, yeah, his wording is this way because he's got to follow the rules. Sometimes these syllogisms sound boring, but it doesn't seem to be that's the case. What a coincidence.
Well, I think
he was exactly what I predicted.
Well, no, Robert, I think it is, and and the reason I say that is because I have the same issue with like Graham Opie's argument, right? And so forth. There are these certain rules these guys got to follow, and I'm not saying it doesn't. We can have good arguments that don't follow those rules, and I think that's what you would be partial to, are good arguments that don't follow those rules all the time, but are still good arguments. Right. We can have good arguments like that. But when these guys are both philosophers, and I can understand the problem. I mean, shoot, I can't even wrap my mind around some of the stuff sometimes either. Sure. But it's all philosophers do it. And I think you hit the nail on the head, too, that they do that at times. And it could be frustrating when you're actually discussing it. But I'll let you go ahead, Travis. I'm going to step out. I just wanted to bring that point in, and I'll just step back out. And that's the good reason that we do have moderators.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Robert. So you have somebody like Graham Oppie. He's going to make the same type of argument, but he's going to use it in favor of naturalism. He has an argument that says something like, well, we should prefer simple theories. The same theoretical virtues I've mentioned, and he'll say something like, well, hey, look, you have the supernatural explanation, and then you have a natural explanation. Well, it would be more parsimonious and a better explanation, like more simple, to simply shave off the supernatural part and say that there's like something like you have a necessary initial state that's just a brute fact, right? And he'll run something like that through the theoretical virtues. And so I promise you, I'm not trying to be sneaky. I'm using this criteria like of how we would make a theory for the ultimate explanation of reality and in favor of theism. And it's like in the academic literature, like there's atheists, who use the same criteria to try and argue for metaphysical naturalism.
Sure. In your defense, what I did was an ad hominem, right? Because he's a Christian, this argument has an issue, and well, I don't say that to say that the argument's wrong. My goal was more like, oh, okay. I thought like you're presenting this like it's the same kind of philosophy as John Rawls or John Stuart Mill or something like that. Like, and my only thing is I'm pointing out this isn't philosophy. This is apologetics. It's not on the same level.
It's metaphysics.
It's metaphysics with an agenda.
Well, yeah. Okay, so yeah, there's an agenda in the sense that let's posit something like theism, like absolute perfection.
Right.
Let's see how that would work if we use the same criteria that somebody like Oppie would use for naturalism. He's kind of saying, well, hey, let's see how theism would do under such a scenario.
And if an atheist talking head or atheist apologist or atheist evangelical, whatever that would be, comes out and he starts talking about philosophy in defense of his argument, we should be skeptical that he might have a bias, right? But we wouldn't say that that's the same as academic level philosophy, because it's not just the unabashed search for truth. There's an agenda, right? That would apply to anybody.
Yeah, I actually look at it a little bit differently, though. I like to consider myself a truth seeker, such that with these arguments, like let's say there's an argument that succeeds that goes against what I would personally believe or hold to, or my personal bias and so forth. Well, I have an intellectual obligation to follow reason where it leads. In fact, Rasmussen has a book. It's called "How Reason Leads to God," which is like where I'm gathering a lot of this argument from. And it's it's kind of like, well, hey, let's kind of explore this and let's let reason take us where it takes us.
You see that his argument would have more validity if he was an atheist that wrote why reason leads to God or what have you. You know what I mean? But the fact that it just happens to be a certain God, and I'm guessing somewhere along the way it happens to be his version of Christianity as well.
Well, no, he posits it as something that's godlike in properties, like it's not going to contain arbitrary limits. It's going to have the eternal power to bring something about. It's going to have morality such that it leads to moral agents. It's going to be intelligent, that as being the foundation of something like mathematics and logic is more parsimonious as being something that's itself intelligent. But he doesn't like really invoke like Christian theism into it. But it's like philosophical theism, I guess would be a good word for it.
Well, let me apologize because I did get off track once again. I thought David had a good point that we should go through the arguments one by one, and you were we agreed on the first one. You were on the second one. I was confused by the wording.
The foundation.
Yeah, I don't perfect foundation and then arbitrary limits. If you don't mind trying to understand those.
Okay, so an arbitrary limit it's kind of like a cutoff without explanation. And so something like, it's going to only produce like certain elements. It's going to have cutoffs that have no explanation of why it should be the case. In other words, certain theories are going to have to posit a lot of brute facts, right?
Like
Another way to think of
what's an example maybe
of an arbitrary limit?
Yeah.
Why we have like the number of atoms in the universe that we do, like when we're trying to explain the totality of reality, something that can only produce like a certain amount of atoms, a certain amount of stars in the universe, it's going to have cutoffs. So we would have to ask things like, well, why is there only this amount? And so a natural explanation is going to have these kind of cutoffs, and we're going to have to add theoretical content to explain.
Oh, well, like a cutoff. Like we don't know. Would that be a cutoff? Like it just is. We don't know why it is. Is that yes, an example of a cutoff?
Yes. And so you're going to have like these various cutoffs, and it's going to add complexity to the theory that we're trying to, like, let's say metaphysical naturalism. And so it's going to have these things that we don't know, and like we have to add content to explain it. And he's saying, well, hey, look, under absolute perfection is not going to have these arbitrary limits, and so it's going to be a more parsimonious type explanation.
Don't you see that's a little circular, isn't it?
No, I don't think so, because there's a criteria of like simplicity. Does it unify the facts of reality? In fact, to kind of touch on this issue of unification. So with natural theories, we're going to have these arbitrary limits or things that we can't explain. So we're going to have to posit perhaps it's simply a brute fact. It just is that it is. Okay. But something like absolute perfection is going to unify the different limits or cutoffs and explain them. And so that's a theoretical virtue, that it can unify these various facts and offer an explanation for them instead of having independent explanations. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's God of the gaps also. It's independent explanations. So we know about electricity, and we know about the speed of light. We don't know how they're connected because we're in, I don't know, early 1900s, right? But then we find out that a photon can only go so fast, right? And we figure out that there's some connection between when you flip on a light switch and the whole room lights up immediately, and the fact that time travel is not possible. Like they all seem like totally random things, but we start finding connections between them as we learn more. If you just say what unifies all these things, and we're back in the 1900s again, and we don't understand about flipping a light switch and why you can't travel back in time, let's say, or speed of light, or whatever. But at that time, you'd say these two things, they're not unified, but my theory actually unifies them because they all come from God. That's God of the gaps. Your God disappeared once we learned more about physics.
No, okay.
So none of these arguments are original.
I need to interject. I need to interject real quick with what you're saying, and I get what you're saying. I honestly do, but again, I'm not explaining God in processes of like God to explain this function of electricity or that. It's the overall theory of why there is electricity in the first place. So it's not God of the gaps. It's not God in process. It's an explanation of why we have the process at all. And so a natural theory that is going to have these things that these cutoffs, limits, arbitrary limits. And so a theory that lacks arbitrary limits is going to be a better explanation for the totality of like why it's here in the first place.
That's circular reasoning.
No, it's not. It's an inference to the best explanation.
It's a bunch of very, very carefully chosen wording to make something sound more complicated than just saying, why is there something rather than nothing? Guy A says, I don't know. And guy B says, let me offer God as the explanation. Well, why is God a good explanation? because it doesn't have arbitrary cutoffs. Well, what's an arbitrary cutoff? The words I don't know. Oh, you magically just used the thing that I said, and you know what I mean? Like it's not as complex as you guys might think, and it's not something to be impressed by. If you want to be impressed by something, real philosophy is extremely impressive. It's way cooler than apologetics. It's way more fun.
See, again, we're using criteria in the philosophy of science. It's not so much apologetics, because it's kind of like, David had mentioned, people like Oppie use these same criteria in argument for metaphysical naturalism.
I'm not really familiar with his work, to be honest. I mean, I've heard of him. But
anyway, so one thing, just to cap on is, like, I agree. I'm very much against God of the gaps type arguments. We don't want to have God in process, but why there is the process in the first place as the explanation for that.
Yeah, how is the unifying aspect of your argument not God of the gaps?
Because so unification, it's used in the philosophy of science when we're doing theory choice. A theory is going to be much more probable if, like, let's say you have these different problems, right? So if you have to tack on, like, this is just a brute fact, this is just a brute fact, but if you have a theory that will plausibly explain all of it and unify them, like, in other words, offer an explanation for all these other aspects, it's going to be more probable than a theory that lacks that kind of explanatory scope.
Oh, so you're using theory like a scientific theory, combining many different scientific laws.
Well, it's theoretical virtues. It's like, how we would do theory choice. So kind of like I was saying, like, even things like cosmic inflation or the continental drift, things like that, or in fact, the discovery of Neptune, like, inference to the best explanation by using this criteria as a proven track record in the philosophy of science. And so that's why people like Oppie and then people like, like Rasmussen and others will say, well, let's take these principles in the philosophy of science that we know work so well and have such a proven track record, and let's do it for a grand theory of reality. And so it's trying to use the principles in the philosophy of science and make, offering an explanation for the totality of reality. So there's a certain set of criteria that it's going to follow.
How do you test this theory?
How do you test the theory? It's the criteria that we use in the philosophy of science. It has a proven track record. Like, like I was saying, like, cosmic inflation is an inference to the best explanation of why there's such uniformity in the cosmic microwave background. Like, it's how we do theory choice. And we know that a simple explanation that unifies different issues and problems that need explanation, if it plausibly would explain these things, it's going to be more parsimonious and more probable than a theory that doesn't.
But do you have a way of testing the theory that all of this came from God?
Yes, it's saying that, absolute perfection is going to lack these arbitrary limits, and it's going to have these theoretical virtues. Like, kind of like I was saying before, to kind of like, let's say something like the physics and fine tuning of, that leads to the embodied moral agents. Well, that would, theism would explain that. And then, like, why we have such an orderly mathematical universe, like why you and I can do mathematical theories that will describe phenomena occurring on the other side of the universe, like so it emerging from an intelligence is going to be a more parsimonious explanation than it just being a brute fact. Like, well, it just is, and we can't explain it.
That's not testing a theory. That's taking particular things and saying, look, these things make it seem like there's a God. And also to the point you made about arbitrary cutoffs, we already discovered that that's just fancy wording for I'm right because I have an answer and you don't. I say I don't know, right? You say I do know,
right?
And then you say my argument's better because I have an answer. There's a
criteria that I'm not. Well, let me kind of touch on that. I'm not just putting it out ad hoc. It's going through a certain criteria that we use in theory choice, and so I'm not just saying, well, God of the gaps, God did it. You can't explain it, therefore God did it. There's a criteria that we're using.
But
here.
you're using the fact that I don't know in defense of your argument. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Like that's absolutely nuts. Let's apply it to something else. What's something that we would investigate? Okay, you and I walk in. Poor David Russell is dead on the floor.
Oh,
we look around for evidence.
David.
We don't know how he died, and you go, he hung himself. Like, well, hold on, Travis. We don't know how he died. And you're like, but my argument for how David Russell died is better than yours. And I'm like, I'm not even making an argument. He's like, but mine explains it better. I'm like, why? He goes, because I say I know. The fact that you don't know how he died is actually one of the arguments for him hanging himself. And I would say, you're a crazy man, Travis. That's nuts.
Okay, let me kind of touch on that, Robert, because I think that's a really good example that you bring up. And so, like, let's say
I don't think you do.
Okay, let's say like we're trying to investigate why is David on the floor dead. Like we're detectives, right? And so we'll look at these different facts of like he's in this position and like is there like an injury of sorts. And so we're going to take these different things and that's how detectives make an inference to the best explanation. And if an explanation will explain why, well, a burglar, would come in and it would explain like why the door is like broken open and why he looks like, he was knocked unconscious first and like he has money missing. And so, different things. And so an explanation that would cover these different facts is going to be a good explanation instead of just saying, well, I don't know, he's dead.
But once again, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but O.J. Simpson got off. He most likely murdered two people. We probably all agree. But he got off because they were able to prove that the guy doing the investigation had a bias, right? They all said, oh, the cop's racist. It was enough. It was enough to create doubt. So one thing, and I know I'm beating the dead horse. I'm just bringing it back. If we're going to continue the analogy of David Russell dead, if for some reason we've discovered that you had a bias about whatever you're saying, even if you're right, we'd probably ignore it, right? Just naturally, like just skeptically, we'd just be like, Travis said that Robert killed him. And we're like, well, Travis hates Robert. Of course he tried to put the murder on Robert. We would be like,
let the moderator jump in, but because I do have a question for you, Robert. Don't you think everybody has a bias? I mean, don't we all have a philosophy of life? And maybe you can explain that. I mean, so would Travis be making a good inference to the best explanation if there was like a rope next to me and it was broken at the seam? I mean, wouldn't that be
everybody
would
has
that be
bias.
Fair? Yeah, but isn't that fair though?
It's fair, but we all have. You and I have the same level of skepticism when a Muslim says that like he's just proven Allah's real and Muhammad's his prophet, right? We're like,
right, absolutely.
We just roll our eyes at it, like, that's what I'm. And once again, I know that's off the topic, and I'm happy to get back into the main topic. But I'm just saying, like, not only are you using the fact that I don't know as one of the points of your argument, which is crazy enough, I'm also, in addition, reminding us that, by the way, you're trying to prove God, like, and you believe that if you can prove God, like, you're going to get rewarded by God, and you're doing it from your heart, which is a good thing. Like, if I believed what you believed, I would also be an evangelical, because I would know that anytime I convince somebody, I just saved them from hell. What's more important than that? So I'm just saying, like, you don't just have a little bias. You don't just walk in the room where the dead body's there and hate Robert and blame Robert. You are claiming to do philosophy on the same level as philosophy whenever the bias is so strong that it deals with eternity, your reward in paradise, and saving people from damnation. I'd say that's not a small thing. So, like, I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
I get your point. I understand that I get that. So I guess what my question, the follow-up question would be, even though we do have a bias, what
You could
about
still be true.
how? Yeah, it could still be true, and that's what I'm saying. What if it was still true, even with the bias? And
John
you know,
Rawls didn't have...
there's people that are going to reject the bias. They're going to reject my argument, and guess what? You could prove me wrong. And I think if we leave with that open-mindedness of, yeah, my theory can be proven wrong, which I think we've done that in the past. I mean, Einstein did it with Newton, you know, with relativity and so forth. And sometimes it takes years. You know, I think it was 20 years for Einstein to really get his shot of the sun and the stars bending around the sun, you know.
Kant didn't have a bias about his categorical imperative. You know what I mean? Rawls didn't have a bias about what was his curtain one? Yeah, where you go behind the curtain and like, but anyway, you know, like these guys, like that level of philosophy, like those guys didn't like. If you found out, what's another one? Aristotelian logic, or what was his virtue ethics, right? Like find somebody who's really good and then follow them. I know you guys really love that one because you got Jesus, but if you found out that as long as he promoted that argument, he would be rewarded. You know what I mean? It wasn't a bad argument. It's just you would be like, hey, wait a minute. We should give Aristotle even more of a hard time than the other philosophers because that guy's got a reason.
Yeah. And you know, you get that famous picture. You see Socrates was it pointing up and Aristotle's pointing inward, you know, and you're like, okay, so yeah, you know, I get you. I'll let Travis go, and then guys, I mean, we're past an hour now, so we can just start closing this up. After you come with this, I'll let you respond, Robert, and then we'll go into like quick closing statements, and you know, plug your show again, Robert.
Yeah,
go ahead, Travis.
Absolutely. So, yeah, okay. So when we look at, you know, this issue of bias, well, you know, I would say regardless of whether or not somebody's biased, that's simply irrelevant. You know, the way you come to know something, you know, whether it's true or not it's irrelevant to how you came to that. And so, you know, there's that. But I mean, under that criteria, like, you know, when I, you know, read like the works of, like, I'm a big fan of Grant Oppy, who's a very prominent atheist philosopher. And so, you know, when I look at his works, is he doing it to prove his cause? Yes, of course. But if he's following a structured argument, like this argument, you know, it doesn't mean that, you know, he's wrong. In fact, it's a solid argument that I would need to deal with. In fact, this is sort of in response to Oppy. And so, you know, I don't see any relevance, because if it's a valid argument, or if it makes sense and it offers an explanation of why naturalism would be more parsimonious than something like theism, that's an argument I need to take seriously and like really look at. That's pretty much all I had to say.
Yeah, fair enough. Travis, you're a cool dude, man. And hopefully, just to say it one more time, intellectually dishonest, I just meant that the flaw in the argument. In no way was I trying to say anything bad about you. I mean, dude, you seem like a cool hipster dude. Not hipster. I
don't know about all
a cool hip dude. I don't know. But anyway, you guys should come on my podcast sometime, The Right to Reason, where we discuss things like apologetics, science, philosophy, what have you. We even do a little bit of like flat Earth and Bigfoot, and we get the crazies on there sometimes.
You got to, man.
And they used to be the nicest people. All like the conspiracy dudes used to be the nicest people before COVID and Trump and all that, and now they're all a-holes. It's so weird. I don't get it. I don't. It's like this was just
angry flat earthers.
Yeah, this was a bridge too far. Asking people to wear masks or like mandatory vaccines, it's really spooking them out, and like they're all angry now. So I can't do as many conspiracy guys as I used to before COVID, but maybe they'll calm down and they can be nice. But like they'll come on and just yell at somebody, cuss them out, and hang up. I'm just like, whoa, that's horrible. This is horrible.
Yeah, crazy, man.
But anyway, all that's at therighttoreason.com. Thank you so much, David and Travis, for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. It's an honor to have you, man.
I did make an ad hominem, and I think I beat a dead horse about the you have a bias thing. I probably should have allowed you more time to discuss the particular arguments that you had rather than focusing on that. But also the particular arguments you had were just awful. So there's that. I'm just trying to be funny. I'm trying to be funny.
I'm going to feel rescued when you said that.
All right.
All right, Travis, why don't you give a quick closing statement there? That was your closing, right, Robert?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So just to, kind of cap everything, we have certain, sets of facts in reality that the theist and the naturalists are trying to explain. And there are a certain set of criteria we use in theory choice, such as simplicity, unification, explanatory depth, the aesthetic of the explanation, causal adequacy. Is it plausibly able to produce the phenomena in need of explanation? And just these various criteria. And then theism, specifically something that's on the grounds of absolute perfection, that lacks arbitrary limits, is going to be more parsimonious. It's going to be simple. It's going to unify the facts that are in need of explanation. It's going to be able to plausibly bring about the evidence that's in need of explanation. It's going to have the causal adequacy, and it's going to lack extra theoretical components tacked on to explain the data. And so I think it does offer an inference to the best explanation of why there is something rather than nothing, and in particular why there is the things that there are.
Right on. Well, guys,
David, real quick.
Go ahead.
Now that I've heard it again, I agree. You convinced me.
Now you said
it took that last one, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. I believe you.
Right on.
I'm having fun.
Well, guys, this has been great. Again, I'm honored to have both of you guys discussing this stuff. I mean, we need to discuss more like this, and just have these type of conversations where we can have fun and disagree without being disagreeable, even though there's ad hominems being thrown around.
That's all good. It happens.
All right, guys, this has been great. Again, this is PORA, guys. Stay tuned. We got a full month in October. Man, we got a lot of stuff coming up. We got podcast extravaganza. We're going to be talking to an exorcist. Yeah. Close to Halloween. So yeah.
Hit me up with that exorcist one. I want to make sure I don't miss that.
Yeah, man. I'll definitely be posting, and I'll send you a thumbnail once we get the actual date. It's either going to be the 16th, or I think we said the 16th or the 30th. So trying to get those dates nailed down. But other than that, we do got a full list and a full schedule. We got T Jump and Dale Glover on next week to discuss the ontological argument. That's going to be fun. So stay tuned, folks, and have a good day.